Are Apple's best days behind or ahead? It's a question that is splitting opinions across the market, and we're here to talk about it. Let's dive in. Today, we're talking about one of the most debated stocks in the market. That's, of course, Apple. Whether Apple's best days are ahead of them or behind is a question on many investors' minds today. So let's dive into this debate. To start, what exactly is the temperature with all of this, and kind of what are the primary reasons behind the contrasting views on Apple?
Well, Lacey, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a lot of contrasting views on Apple. Almost any analyst is going to tell you that Apple's a very well-run company. This isn't something that anybody's worried about, the company not being a viable investment for years to come. But like you said, the debate comes in when people start saying, is the company's best days behind it or ahead of it? I think we've gotten spoiled with Apple because ever since around 2000 or so, we've had, it was the iPod, and then it was the iPhone, and then it was the iPad, and then it was the earbuds, and then it's the Apple Watch. And people are wondering, well, what's that next thing? And they don't see it. Apple hasn't come out with it yet. They've kind of teased it, but nothing's come out of it. People are looking for growth. Apple has to deliver on it. And at over 30 times forward earnings, they're going to have to, some investors want to see that before they're going to pay the premium for the stock.
Yeah, I think Chris is exactly right here. I don't think this is contrasting views because most investors view it as a must-own stock. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's amongst the most heavily traded and owned. It's owned by funds and institutions, but there is that debate to its value. It does command that premium value for being the premium tech growth stock. I mean, it's double the broad market average, and it isn't growing this year. As bad as growth this year is, the broad market is still growing. Apple is contracting. The outlook for next year is better, but still lags the broad market consensus. Apple is awesome. The question is, how awesome is it? And is it worth 30 times earnings?
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into the specifics just a little bit more here. So Apple services, we're talking about everything from Apple TV, the App Store, Apple Music, iCloud. There's many other subscription services. So sometimes it's easy to forget that there's more to Apple than just their iPhones. And we've talked about this a little bit before on another Apple video on this channel, but one product leads to another. It's an ecosystem. But how significant is the services unit for Apple's revenue? And why does Dan Ives believe that it's undervalued?
Well, services will be the growth driver for the long term. Services are currently less than 25% of the business. And other tech companies are doing it. You see it all over the tech space. Previous software companies, previous product companies are shifting more into services because there's only so many iPhones and iPads that you can sell. So penetrating with services is the way to go. Those services could include expanding the TV offerings, including a bid for ESPN, which Mr. Ives has called out as a Christmas wish. I think that YouTube has proven that sports belong on streaming channels, and so I think that would be a real win for Apple.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying, Apple is an ecosystem all its own. It's not uncommon that when you see people that own an iPhone, they also own other Apple accessories, whether that's the watch, whether that's the iPad, whatever that may be. And all of those come with services that you can pay a monthly fee to Apple for. One of those big ones is Apple TV, and I think Thomas just brought it up. Apple has made there's no discussion that Apple is trying to clearly get into the streaming sector. They're trying to get into the streaming sports sector, and whether you like sports or not, streaming live sports is a huge growth market in the streaming sector. Apple wants in it. They just missed out on getting the NFL Sunday Ticket contract for this year, 2023. They've got the capital to get into the market, and I believe that they will make some sort of splash here in some form or fashion.
Okay, you had mentioned the Apple Watch, so I just want to throw this in here really quickly. So I'm sure you guys have seen the news around their newest watch and the issues with, someone else's patent here. Is this something that needs to be concerning for investors, or is it just something that's going to kind of fly under the wheel? They'll figure it out. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial thought, I've read some of the things about it. My initial thought is, I think that this probably is going to be not much of anything, as long as Apple doesn't make it more than what it is. To me, it's more of a marketing issue than a legal issue at this point. As long as it stays in that realm, I don't think it's a big issue.
All right, so moving along, one of the most compelling arguments from Apple bears is that the company's revenue continues to be lower year over year, amid concerns about declining hardware software. How is Dan Ives kind of countering that argument against Apple's future iPhone sales, especially maybe in the markets like China?
Yeah, well, he's simply saying the data that the data that some analysts have is incorrect. His channel counters over in China are saying demand for the iPhone has not declined. They're going to come in with good numbers in China. He's saying holiday sales for the iPhone are going to be fine. So really, it's just a question of, how much weight you put on somebody like Dan Ives, who's saying, according to the data he is seeing, demand for the iPhone is as strong as ever.
All right, Thomas, talk to us a little bit here. Apple stock is facing resistant levels. So share with us, how might recent controversies and market trends impact the short-term trajectory?
All right, so this chart looks a little top heavy to me. I'm not saying that Apple won't keep rallying or that it won't rebound from a correction and set new highs, only that it's at a critical resistance point and set up to fall. If, when, and how deep that correction is depends on economic conditions and the FOMC as much as their results. Regardless, history says that if Apple falls, you should buy it because you'll be making money within the next 6 to 12 months.
All right, and for the investors that are eyeing this stock, what's the strategic approach here? What are the key factors that they should be weighing when they're considering it as a long-term investment?
Well, you need to understand that this is an ecosystem. The products link. Once you get one new customer, you're bound to penetrate with more devices. So it's a lifestyle play as much as a tech play. There's also the AI edge, consumer AI. But strictly from the investment standpoint, Apple has got solid cash flow, a healthy balance sheet, tons and tons of cash, plenty of liquidity, dividend and share repurchases. It's really a total package. The big question now is, what will their next move be?
Yeah, so a little fact that I heard that has stuck in my brain, probably because I fit this profile, is that 25% of the iPhone base has not upgraded their phone in 4 years. So at some point, even the most practical person, you just have to upgrade your phone. And so that's going to be a nice lift for iPhone sales here in the future. One thing I think that investors should pay attention to, especially if you don't already have a position in Apple tends to get really funky around earnings, and it's not uncommon for Apple to have really good earnings and have the stock fall. So Apple reports, I think February 1st, something to watch for. But, again, I agree with Thomas. Fundamentally, this is a good long-term investment for you. There could be some choppiness here in the short term.
All right. Well, yes, we will be continuing to take a look at this stock. We'll be back to talk about it after earnings, I'm sure. But the road ahead might have a few short-term hurdles, but overall potential is keeping investors interested, as we've seen. Stay tuned for more market insights right here at Market Beat. We'll talk soon.